everybody, it's me, Angela Walters, your favorite Midnight Quilter. In this episode, I'm going to use extra wide fabric to make an extra big quilt extra fast. So let's get to it. I've been hoarding this luscious, extra wide backing fabric by Tula Pink for quite a while, waiting for a quilt that's worthy of it. And then I realized, why not use it on the front? Using this as a starting point, I'm gonna find the perfect fabrics to match up with it. Nope, not right. Too plain, too plain. I don't know, I don't like the looks of that. Boring. Oh, now you are perfect. That's great. Okay. I think this is gonna be perfect. Look, I may not be choosy about my wine, my favorite kind is any, but I can be a little snobby about my fabrics. But you completely understand, don't you? Time to start cutting. To make the cutting go quicker and easier, I'm gonna use the Stripology ruler by Gudrun Erla in Creative Grids. I'm gonna start off by folding it, making sure that those edges are parallel. And then on my ruler, you might not be able to see it, but I've used glow line tape to mark the measurements that I need for this particular quilt. It's as easy as putting a little sticker on there. Now it's time to cut into the extra wide fabric. You're too pretty for the back of a quilt. But before I cut, I'm gonna press it and get out some of those wrinkles. To make sure that my cuts are straight, I'm gonna start by folding it half. And I'm gonna pay extra close attention to make sure that these edges are parallel. Before I cut any of my strips though, I'm gonna do a little test cut of about 1/2 inch to make sure it's nice and straight. I don't wanna waste any of this beautiful fabric. And once I open it up, I'm gonna check and make sure that it lays nice and straight. It's hard enough to sew long strips together when they're straight. When they're crooked, well, that's just more organic. And if it is a little crooked, well, you could just reposition and try another test strip. Let's try this again. Kind of difficult to hold on. I need to get my glasses. That's better. It's always easier to see when I have my glasses. I'm just kidding. I only need one. All right, once I have that nice, perfect straight strip, then I can start cutting. This is when a new rotary blade comes in really handy. I have a lot of strips, but they're not all the same length, so I'm gonna sew them together to make them a little bit longer. First, I'm gonna straighten up a little bit. This is too messy even for me. Using my strips of regular width fabric, I'm gonna join them together much like I would if I were doing binding. So I'm gonna place them right sides together at a right angle. Then I'm gonna sew a diagonal line from corner to corner and trim off the extra. Doing it this way creates less bulk, which will come in really handy when I make my strip unit. And I'm just gonna repeat with the rest of the strips. Once all my strips are the same length, I can assemble them to make my strip unit. I've laid out a strip of each fabric and I'm gonna sew them together in groups of 2 and then sew the groups together. And I'm gonna have miles and miles and miles of fabric. The great thing is, it's so mindless, I can just enjoy it. And I'm gonna wait till the whole thing is done before I do any pressing. Once that's all sewn together, I can press it. Pressing these seams right is gonna make the cutting a lot easier. So I'm gonna take the extra little bit of effort and press them open. Finally done with the strip units. It may not look like it, but it's actually 2 weeks later. I'm kidding, it didn't take quite that long. The first thing I want to do after putting together a bunch of strip units is to cut them into pieces, so that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to cut these in all different lengths, and then I'll show you how to assemble the block. I've cut up all those strip units into different lengths, from really big to itsy bitsy, and I'm going to assemble them to make the first quarter of my quilt. Hey, I know it's a lot of fabric, but this is going to be a big quilt. When I designed this pattern, I wanted to make sure it would keep my feet warm when it was on our bed. If you want to find out more about the pattern, you can click the link in the description box. Well, let me show you how the block goes together. This quilt block is assembled much like a log cabin. I'm going to start with my center piece and use the sections of the strip unit that I cut to place on the bottom, sides, and tops. So I'm going to start by sewing these two together. Then I'm going to sew the side piece to this unit. Now, these pieces are going to get really big really quick, so I'm going to use pins to make sure they stay in place. I'm going to be using some magic pins. No, really, that's what they're called, magic pins. I don't know what kind of magic they have, but I can use all the help I can get. So the first portion is sewn together, a quick press, and then I'm going to keep adding to this block. Okay, now we're going to add the side and the bottom piece. I'm going to sew them together just like I did the previous section by sewing these together and then sewing on the bottom piece. Fold it in half and find the center and make sure they're centered on each other. Matching up the midpoints will help ensure that it's centered on the block. This block is getting big, but I'm not finished yet. I'm gonna press it again and keep going. By the time we're done with this block, it's gonna be a quarter of the quilt. So that means I have a lot more strips to add. I'm gonna add a strip to the sides and the top, assemble it all together, and I'll show you what it looks like when I'm done. And this block is finished. I told you it was gonna be big. It's actually a quarter of the quilt. I could stop right here and I'd have the perfect size of a baby quilt, but this is gonna go on my bed and I need it to be bigger. What I love about this pattern is that there's no matching seams and it really does go together pretty quickly. Plus, it looks awesome in different colorways. Check out this color option. It looks just as good in these beautiful greens. And don't forget, I have the pattern available as well as a limited supply of both of these quilt kits. But I'm not gonna stop at a baby size quilt because I'm way past that stage. I want this to go on my bed. So I'm gonna put this aside and focus on this one. To make this quilt, I'm gonna make a second block that's pretty much like the first, just mirror imaged. Then I'm gonna give it a beautiful center strip, do the same on the other side, and I'll have a giant quilt. So I'm gonna get this assembled and get it ready for machine quilting. I've got my quilt sandwich basted. I have my threads picked out, beautiful shades of peach and papaya. It's the coordinating thread collection that goes along with this kit. Sounds very tropical, don't you think? Like I could be machine quilting somewhere on a beach, but I'm not. I'm here, and I'm gonna get started with the quilting. Even though there's a lot of strips in this quilt, the blocks go together quickly, and with no matching points, I don't have to worry how precise my piecing is. I love how the pattern shows off Tula Pink's beautiful fabric, and even though it's meant for the back of quilts, it looks just as stunning on the front. Thanks so much for joining me for the second episode of the Midnight Quilter. For information about the kit, the pattern, or any of the products shown, you can find that in the description box below. And I'll be back next week with another episode. Until then, happy quilting!